Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cutting straight to something incredibly relevant. Understanding your rights when you're dealing with creditors here in the USA.
Yeah, definitely relevant.
We've been looking at a really useful resource. It's a podcast episode called Know Your Power, Understanding Your Rights with Creditors, episode 65 of Money Talks with Alex and Mia.
And what's truly eye-opening, is how disempowered so many people feel when a creditor gets in touch.
Right. That feeling in your stomach.
Exactly. So this deep dive is really all about flipping that script for you, the listener. We want to pull out the most vital info to help you grasp your protections and, well, navigate these interactions confidently.
So you come away feeling in control, not just swamped by it all.
Precisely.
And it's easy to feel that knot of anxiety when the phone rings or an email pops up from a creditor. But what's key to remember right from the start is that there are actually laws. Laws specifically designed to protect you.
That's the core message, really.
Yeah. Getting to grips with these laws is the absolute first step in taking charge. Okay, so let's unpack this. Maybe the best place to start is with what we could think of as your foundational defense. The Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the FDCPA.
Exactly. The FDCPA, if we zoom out for a moment, it's really about creating a more balanced playing field, between individuals and those trying to collect debts.
A level playing field, okay.
Yeah. It lays down clear rules of engagement for debt collectors, preventing them from using tactics that are just unfair or, frankly, overly aggressive.
So what does this FDCPA actually do for you? In practical terms?
Well, for one thing, it puts some pretty firm boundaries on when they can contact you.
Right. Time limits.
Yeah, we're talking no calls before 8 a.m. or after 9 p.m. your local time. I mean, it sounds like common courtesy, right? But it's actually legally mandated.
It is. And it's more than just courtesy. It's a recognition of your right to peace and quiet in your own home. It stops debt collectors from disrupting your life at unreasonable hours, adding all that unnecessary stress. But it definitely doesn't stop there. The FDCPA also has strong rules against harassment, making threats, and just plain lying.
Oh, absolutely. The lying part is huge.
Think about it. You know that stereotypical image we all have? The relentless debt collector, let's call her, I don't know, Brenda from Collections, Inc.
Okay, Brenda.
Well, Brenda cannot legally threaten to, get the authorities involved just because you're behind on a credit card payment. That's pure intimidation.
And the FDCPA flat out prohibits that kind of behavior. It acknowledges that people dealing with debt can be in a vulnerable position.
Makes sense.
And it prevents collectors from exploiting that vulnerability through abusive or deceptive practices. Things like calling you over and over just to annoy you, using offensive language, or falsely claiming they'll have you arrested if you don't pay up.
Which sounds terrifying, but isn't legal.
Not at all.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting, and this feels like a serious power move.
Yeah.
You actually have the right to tell them to stop contacting you altogether.
Yes. The cease and desist.
And this isn't just, a polite request they can ignore. It's a legally binding demand. If you send this request in writing.
Has to be in writing.
Right. There are very specific exceptions, like if they're telling you about potential legal action or just confirming they will stop contacting you, but generally, they have to back off.
It's like sending a legally enforceable do not disturb notice, a really powerful tool.
Yeah, a do not disturb with teeth.
Exactly. It empowers you to regain control, avoid that relentless stress. But it's vital to remember those exceptions, though.
Right, the legal action notification.
They can still communicate about potential legal proceedings. That's allowed.
Okay, so the FDCPA is our bedrock, our foundation. Now let's move on to what we're calling Power Move #1, demanding debt validation. Sounds a bit formal.
It does, but it's really straightforward.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating how this simple step can stop a lot of problems right in their tracks.
How so?
Well, when a debt collector contacts you, you have the absolute right to make them prove that the debt is actually yours and that they have the legal right to collect it.
Okay, so you make them show their work.
Precisely. You request a debt validation letter. That's the term.
Debt validation letter, got it.
And this letter should give you key details like who the original creditor was, the total amount they claim is owed, and ideally, some documentation connecting you to that debt.
And why is that so important, beyond just knowing the details?
Well, its importance really can't be overstated. It acts as a shield against being chased for debts you don't even recognize, or maybe debts you've already paid off.
For those? What was the term? Zombie debts.
Ah, yes, the zombie debts. Great name, isn't it?
It paints a picture.
It does. These are debts that are essentially legally dead. Maybe the statute of limitations ran out or they were discharged in bankruptcy. But some collectors still try to, well, resurrect them.
Bring them back to life to get paid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that debt validation letter, it's like kryptonite for these financial zombies. If they can't provide proper proof,
Then what?
then you have no legal obligation to pay, full stop.
No proof, no payment. Simple as that.
Simple as that. Which raises a question for listeners. Have you ever been contacted about a debt that just didn't feel quite right? Something seemed off.
Good question.
Demanding validation is your first and probably strongest defense in those situations.
Okay, power move, #1, validate the debt. Let's move on to power move #2, protecting your personal information. This one might seem obvious.
You'd think so, right? But it's surprising how many people feel pressured into handing over sensitive details.
Yeah, collectors can be pretty persuasive or maybe intimidating.
They might try to create a sense of urgency or even imply that giving them your bank account details or, say, where you work is mandatory.
And let's be crystal clear here. It is unequivocally not mandatory.
Absolutely not.
You are under no obligation whatsoever to give debt collectors your bank account numbers, your employer's details, your social security number, anything like that.
That's volunteer.
Just don't do it. Giving them those details can really open you up to potential problems, risks down the line.
And if we connect this back to the bigger picture, think about it. Giving them that info gives them significantly more leverage, more ways to pursue collection.
Right, like wage garnishment or freezing accounts, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. Or avenues that might not be entirely above board or in your best interest anyway. Keeping this information private is just fundamental to keeping control over your finances.
Keep your cards close to your chest, basically.
You got it.
Okay, so what happens if a collector does step over the line, engages in illegal behavior? That brings us to power move, #3, fighting back against those illegal actions.
Because you're definitely not powerless here.
Good. What can people do?
Well, there are established channels for seeking recourse. You can report violations of the FDCPA to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the CFPB.
CFPB.
They're the federal agency specifically tasked with protecting consumers in the financial world. And you can also file a complaint with your state attorney general's office.
State AG. Why them too?
Because many states have their own laws regulating debt collection, sometimes even stricter than the federal ones.
Layers of protection. And here's something that might surprise people. Some folks actually take legal action. They sue debt collectors for harassment and other FDCPA violations.
They do. And sometimes they win.
The source material even mentioned the idea of getting compensated for being harassed, which really underlines that these laws have real teeth.
Right, real consequences for those who break them. It's about, well, turning the tables on those who try to bully or intimidate you unlawfully.
Turning the tables, I like that.
Now, it's important to understand, pursuing legal action usually means you need to talk to a lawyer, get legal counsel.
Makes sense. It's complicated.
It can be. But the fact that individuals can and sometimes do receive damages for FDCPA violations really highlights how seriously these rules are taken. And just the possibility of legal trouble can be a big deterrent for sketchy collectors.
Right. Makes them think twice. Now, let's talk about something that can be a bit tricky but is really important. Statutes of limitations. This is power move #4, and it's all about time limits.
Yeah, statutes of limitations. In essence, every state has its own legal time limit, a deadline, basically, for how long a creditor can sue you to collect on a specific debt.
So after a certain number of years, they can't take you to court for it.
Generally, yes. Once that time period expires, they usually lose the legal right to sue you to recover that debt. It becomes time-barred.
Okay, that might sound like a straightforward way out for older debts, but there's a really, really critical catch here, isn't there?
Oh, a huge one. You absolutely have to be aware of this. Making even a small payment sometimes, even just acknowledging the debt in writing on a very old, potentially time-barred debt.
What happens?
It can restart that entire statute of limitations clock all over again.
Wow. So you basically just brought the zombie back to life.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
You've given that dormant zombie debt a jolt of electricity and made it legally active again.
So engaging with really old debts, even with what seems like a harmless small payment, can completely backfire.
Massively. It can revive a debt that was essentially legally unenforceable. That's why the source material strongly advises seeking legal counsel before doing anything on debts you think might be past the statute of limitations.
Don't just send a check for $10 thinking you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely not. Before you even consider acknowledging or paying anything on a debt you suspect is old, talk to a legal professional. Seriously.
Could save you a lot of trouble down the road.
A lot of trouble. As the source suggests, sometimes the best approach might actually be no engagement at all if it risks reviving the debt.
That prompts an important thought for listeners, right? Do you have any debts in your past that you're just unsure about age-wise?
Yeah, knowing the statute of limitations in your specific state, because it varies, and getting expert advice before you act is just crucial.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Let's maybe do a quick run-through of those essential rights. The source called them quick power moves.
Good idea. Let's recap. So, in summary, first and foremost, you have the fundamental right to be treated with respect. No harassment from debt collectors.
Right.
No threats, no lies, no abuse.
Exactly.
Sure.
Second, you have the right to demand formal validation of any debt they claim you owe. Make them prove it.
Power move, #1. Got it.
Third, you have the right to keep your sensitive personal info private. Bank accounts, employer details, you don't have to share.
Power move, #2. Don't give them the cue.
Precisely. Fourth, you have the right to tell them, in writing, to stop contacting you, remembering those specific exceptions we talked about.
A legally binding do not disturb.
That's the one. And finally, fifth, you have the right to take action if they do violate the FDCPA or other laws. Report them, maybe even sue.
Power move, #3. Fight back legally. And the core message, the thread running through all of this, like the source emphasizes.
Knowledge is power, truly. Understanding these rights puts you in a significantly stronger, more confident position when you have to deal with creditors.
It just fundamentally changes the dynamic, doesn't it? Completely. Instead of feeling intimidated and, unsure, you can engage from a place of informed confidence. You can assert your rights effectively.
So, to wrap up our deep dive today, hopefully you now have a much clearer picture of the significant rights you actually possess when interacting with creditors in the U.S.
Yeah, knowing these protections can dramatically alter your experience. It can stop you from feeling overwhelmed or, worse, being taken advantage of.
The most important takeaway really is this. Don't feel powerless. The law gives you crucial protections.
And simply being aware of them is the vital first step towards confidently asserting your power, using that knowledge.
Okay, finally, here's a thought to really chew on as we finish up. Consider which of these rights might be most relevant to your own situation right now. Or maybe to someone you know who might be struggling with debt collectors.
Yeah. Personalize it.
And maybe ask yourself, what practical steps could you take to learn more about the specific debt collection laws right where you live in your state? It's definitely worth looking into.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.